Hello, everyone. Yes, it is I, Clarke of the Mark. If anyone was not here for the last panel I was on, the term Clarke of the Mark was completely coined just right off the top by Dan, one of the other panelists. I'm keeping it. I'm running away with it. But to those of you, we are now live. Hello, I am J.M. Clarke, writer of Mark of the Fool and Rune Seeker. So happy to see you all, and so happy to have you all see me. Last year, I had the Clagon face. I know it's a bit of a downgrade this year, but I am so excited to be here. It's just so much fun talking and answering questions and just prattling on endlessly until y'all get bored of me and drag me off the stage. So, yes, so, for those of you who've never been to a takeover before, essentially how this works is that I come on, I start talking, usually rambling. I don't exactly have a big speech planned or anything like that. But as soon as y'all answer questions, that is the main star of the stage. Your questions, I answer them as best as I can. And we go from there, having ourselves a little dialogue. I can see your comments scrolling as right now. I beg of you, be kind to me, as I will be kind to you. And we go from there. So, Katie Hanna comes in swinging. How did I come up with Mark of the Fool? So, I recently answered this question on a Crit RPG podcast, but essentially, um, sorry, it's a bit funny, but I had an insane thought. It was back in to early 2020. I'd just come off of the first book of Oath's Blood and Coin, known as Ogre's Pendant on Royal Road at the moment, and I was at the tail end of a master's, and I was looking for something else to write. And Write-a-thon was coming up, and I ended up having this thought. Had a conversation with a person online by the name of Emmy Deer, who encouraged me to write at that particular time, and then I was reading Beware of Chicken. Absolutely loved that book. Completely and totally. Fantastic novel. And I had the strangest thought. What if Beware of Chicken and Mother of Learning, which is one of my favorites of all progression fantasy, were the same book? So the mystery and action and all the theory crafting and magic of Mother of Learning combined with the coziness and the characters of Beware of Chicken. And from there, Mark of the Fool was born. And on this on a serious, it started off as like a little challenge for write-a-thon. It got away from me 10 books later, with my goal being at the time of never missing an update day, but here we are, and so glad that it got away from me. Ah, fantastic. But yes, so that was basically its origin story. It does go back a little further, like a lot of Mark of the Fool, what went into it were a bunch of okay. So one of my parts of my creative process is like I just constantly go and I'll come up with characters for D&D or different monsters or stuff like that for novels and whatever, and I will leave that behind. I will leave that behind. I will put that away from now for now. And then when I have a story idea, I will go into that treasure chest, also known as a trash dump, for some of those ideas, pull them out, and I will then infuse them, and give them life into my new story. So Mark of the Fool had dozens of half-finished D&D ideas and story ideas that were born and lived through the story. So yes, so that's how it came to be. Let's see what else. Oh, how much was planned from the beginning and how much was on the fly. So it was a bit of a mix. So fun fact, I knew what the ending to the series was by chapter 5 of book 1. Um on and I that tends to be my philosophy, is that in the past, because I have wanted to be a writer and have been writing since I was around 13 or so, and a problem that I kept running into was writing myself into a corner, sometimes at 40 pages and one horrifyingly crushing time at around 300. So, what I learned from that is to always have an idea of where you're going. It's very hard to get lost if you always know which direction you should be building into. So I very either from before I start typing or at the end of it all, so before I start typing or very near the beginning, I tried to get the ending of the series down. But from there, there was some of it planned, but a lot of it was just the character speaking to me. I mean, like I said, this was a challenge that got out of hand, and the I then kept going at Royal Road's breakneck pace. Again, keeping my vow of never missing an update. And so a lot of it just ended up being a mix of planning ahead, pantsing. I did more planning as the series went on, as as the series expanded, and I need to remember more stuff. But yeah, it was a little bit of a conversation back and forth between pantsing and planning. Hope that answers your question. Now, why am I so cool? The answer is I am not. I am a giant dork who has managed to fool you all into reading my stories. And truthfully, I thank you for that. I thank you. Like, never have I thought that I would be creating stories that so many people would be interested in listening to and reading, and it just touches my heart every single damn day every time I think about it. And I really wanted to give that thank you for that one. Seriously, I always appreciate it. And yes, I actually do have a master's. It's in social work with a focus on counseling. I have a psychotherapy background as well as a background in a number of other social services type things, and also with my undergrad, I have a background in psychology and neuroscience, and a lot of that training went into Mark of the Fool and how the mark worked. Like a lot of how Alex overcomes the mark is based off of mindfulness practices, which was something I learned throughout my education. So that it really bled into my writing and informed a lot of it. And there's a lot of that went into Oath's Blood and Coin as well, into Runeseeker, into that's going to be in I Am Become Death. Like in a lot of the psychological aspects of life and my training inform a lot of my writing, I find. But yeah, so I do have a master's, and that's what it's in. Next, a serious question. What do I think are the key mechanics of a progression fantasy that separates it from a regular fantasy? Oh, now that is interesting. Okay, I have a bit of a controversial opinion on this. In my opinion, progression fantasy and other forms of fantasy are not so far apart. I often see people say, "Oh, like it's a completely different process. The DNA is different." Um, but I find that they are, if not one and the same, at least siblings. What I would say is the mechanics that separate progression fantasy from regular fantasy is a focus on growth. Not just growth happens, but a focus on it. That can be a spiritual, that can be. Sorry, I just saw Quirky Pantis comment. Oh, we love psycho therapists and lit RPG. Oh man, that is good. Um, but in any case, oh my god, I completely lost my train of thought there. Hold on, let me do my mindfulness practices to get it back. No, where was I? Oh dear God, no, it's gone. Hold on. Oh yeah, progression fantasy mechanics. There we are. So I feel that it is simply a focus on power and growth. And that I think is a sort of representation of how we interact with fantasy and media in general. One thing I will say is that if you look at the history of fantasy, the history of fantasy and the history of serialization is almost one and the same. A lot of fantasy's DNA came from, of course, Tolkien, but it also came from sword and sorcery serials such as Conan, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, and things like that. And when you were writing a serial in that form in a magazine back in the 1930s and 40s, you could not be sure as to whether or not any single reader buying a magazine would have read any other story of this character. So you had to keep them consistent and you had to keep them basically recognizable at all points in time. That's why Conan is so iconic, because while there are various changes throughout the stories, they are subtle enough so that no matter which one you pick it up, no matter when you pick it up, it's still recognizable as Conan. As time has marched on, a greater emphasis on growth and character development has come in, not only influenced by shonen and video games as well, but by the fact that now readers have so much easy access to the book in all its forms in all times. Um, yeah, the book in all its forms at all times, and are able to just you're able to just never lose track of like a volume in a bookstore. It's all available in serial or Amazon. As such, continuity, power, and progression can take a center stage. They can be used to solve problems in a way that it couldn't really be before, in my opinion. And again, I also go with the Andrew Rowe definition of progression fantasy, where the main character in book 3 should be able to defeat the main character in book 1. The main character in book 5 should be able to defeat the main character in book 3. It's always forward, it is growth, and it is a focus on that, either from a mechanical perspective or a spiritual perspective. And that's necessary for progression fantasy. Whereas for regular fantasy, it's a bonus, but it's not necessary. That would be, I would say, is the difference. Alrighty, moving along. Daniel. Daniel is the one that Daniel is the one that coined my new nickname, Clarke of the Mark. And so I'm happy to have him here again. And his question is, as an avid D&D player, what is your go-to race and class? And what specific characters have you made that are now a part of your books? Oh, now this is a question after my own heart. Okay, let's go down the list, shall we? So probably so this sounds sort of odd, considering that I wrote a book about a young wizard going to a wizard university and went into all kinds of mechanics of the magic in that world. But I almost always play fighters. Like, seriously, I almost always play fighters and barbarians when I'm at the table. It's actually a running joke with my friends that I will pick a melee class. We usually find the biggest weapon, find the physically largest race that I can, with the highest strength and constitution scores that I can get my hands on, and then I will play the hell out of that thing. My longest running character was a D&D character. My DM at the time had made a custom race to represent the Warhammer style orcs, which get bigger and fightier over time. And I ended up playing this Cockney accented orc who became a demigod, growing through battle. He ended up like literally 30 feet tall, huge size for those that play 3.5, with a colossal sword, and he was the best chef on the material plane, as well as one of the most powerful warriors. But yeah, that was my longest running character. But Thundar, the Minotaur, was one of my old D&D characters. Balin had some inspiration from a character from a Mordheim, which is like a Warhammer game that was in one of my war bands. Let's see now. Hart Red Fletcher was a character that was a D&D character that then almost was in Oath's Blood and Coin, but he didn't work there, so he finally got his real birth in Mark of the Fool. Oh my god, I am stupid. But yeah, in Mark of the Fool, in Mark of the Fool, the series that I wrote. And let's see, spoilers, but some of Balin's cabal are actually from different D&D games as well. They were NPCs in various D&D games, and I could go down the list, but it is a lot. Bjorgrind, there was another one, as a matter of fact. And it goes down the line. But if I haven't frightened you off with my hackish skills, hey Aurora, oh man, it's good to see you. But if I haven't frightened you off with my hackish skills, you will see more of my D&D characters at the time. All right. Little Snug, full hardback copies of Mark of the Fool when? Okay. All right. So I am working on it, but I'm also working on something else. I don't quite want to announce it fully yet. I will announce it on my Discord and Facebook when we're ready to go, but it is what I would call a slightly different version of Mark of the Fool, um, broken up slightly differently in terms of books and with art inserts within them. And it's not a hardback, it's not a Kickstarter, it's something a little bit different. And I'm going to sit on that for now, let the mystery sort of percolate for a little bit there. And but yeah, I'll have more news on that in the future. As for actual hardbacks, I curse Amazon for not being able to make hardbacks of my books since they are so large. But we're working on other solutions at the moment. Melis, et tu, Melis. But yes, we're working on that as well. Okay, next, listen, Brain, do you know what's happening with the comic? I do. It had a major delay. I can't really say why. But it was a major delay, and it will be, but it is scheduled to come out in 2025. It was sort of scheduled possibly for earlier in the year. Oh God, Lil Snug. Oh, be still my heart, right under Wheel of Time. My goodness, you know how to sweet talk a fantasy author, my friend. But yes, oh God, I lost my train of thought completely again. But either way, long story short, oh God, Geneva, could you bring the question up again? That was this is terrible. I completely lost my train of thought once again there. But Melis and my last comment did me in. But hold on. Maybe I can remember it. Comic. Thank you. Yes. So that is I would not have gotten that myself. Dear God. So the comic is still brewing. I will say that things are going in a direction I'm quite happy with, but the delay was necessity. Was a necessity for that. So yes. Yes, John Doe, they are too big and powerful for Amazon to handle. Okay, Robert, what's my favorite D&D character I have created, and do I have a character class I tend towards? So yes, I've sort of answered this question. Slog was my favorite for a long time. I've also played Shitani at Hamakohira, who was a Blood Rager in a Pathfinder tournament. He was also one of my favorites. There was Bors the Forester, a second edition character. He was a very he was a very nice guy. Just a cinnamon ball, just a cinnamon bun. Him. Who else? Oh, there's so many. I can't really say there's a favorite, but yeah, I tend to really like the smashy types. One thing, actually, a little insight on Mark of the Fool. One of the reasons why I don't tend to play wizards in third edition is because I generally couldn't wrap my head around Vancian magic. Like, it didn't quite make sense to me conceptually going into it. So I ended up gravitating toward fighters, and I play them in most games. I do like gigantic characters. You only have to take a half glance at the Fool cast to figure that one out. But in terms of wizards, yeah, I more like a system based on mana, based on ritualism, or based on burning your own essence or something like that. So with Fool, it was a bit of a fix where I had you learning spells, then just using mana to power them. It was a bit of a, I wish D&D 3.5 worked like this going into Fool there. But yes, that's it. JM, serious question. Who would win in a fight, Rachel or Brian? Okay. The answer is a very, very, very complex one, and I don't feel comfortable answering this. But the answer is Rachel. Like, it's very easy. Like the complexity need can be left aside for this one. It's Rachel 10 times out of 10. Sorry, Brian. Next up, Sam. What do you think the advantages and disadvantages are for releasing your book chapter by chapter as a web novel? Oh my goodness, what a question to answer. All right. The answer is editing. Generally, now, a lot of authors look at me like if I've got 3 to 5 heads whenever I say this. But my favorite part of writing is the first to second pass of editing. Because the way I look at it, when I'm writing things in a first draft, that's not me writing the story. That's me laying down the block of stone. That block of stone during the editing pass is what I will eventually chisel into the final version of the story. And that usually requires an edit. I usually do a deep edit chapter by chapter, which is one of the reasons why I could adapt to serialization. But I also tend to do a deep edit of a book afterward. And the one disadvantage I find of serialization is that it's difficult to do that sort of edit when you're serializing, especially at the speed that I was going at, roughly Mach 16. A lot of chapters, like, I did as much editing as possible at the cost of my health sometimes. But I really wanted the story to go out there as best as I could make it. But that extra chiseling is what sometimes is sacrificed when you're doing a serialization. And there's also stress. I find that if I have a book and I'm like, okay, this book is due in a few months, I can set my own schedule. I don't stress about it. Daily deadlines will strain your adrenal glands like nothing else, especially after a time. So I find the advantage of serialization is that it gets your butt in the chair. You will produce like you never would have can even believed you were capable of. But at the same time, there are some sacrifices for the process, and it's stressful. So those are the ups and downs. All right. Louise, Mark of the Fool anime when? I would like to say right now, but the answer is I don't know. About a year to 2 years ago, I would have said, "You're insane. There's never going to be a Mark of the Fool anime." I still I'm not going to say either way. You have to understand, few and far between are the stories that ever get animation. Animation is expensive and all these sorts of things. And I'm like, oh, I wrote a little Royal Road story. There's no way it's going to become an anime. But then the beginning after the end got an anime, and all bets are off now. So the answer is I don't know. Hopefully someday. I That's all I can say about it. But we shall see. We shall see. Robert, again, do I have a story or theme that's been brewing in my mind, perhaps waiting for the right moment to explore or in full stride? Absolutely, I have a list. Oath's Blood and Coin, Book 2, I've been chomping at the bit to write that one for a long time now. I Am Become Death is actually had its roots in an earlier story that I created, at least partially, back in 2015. And then I was able to adjust it, and it's funny because I came up with a story, and my thing was, oh, I'm going to write an epic fantasy, but I'm going to be unique. I'm going to take the training stuff that you see in shonen, and I'm going to make my characters earn their power with actual training sequences and details on how they gain their strength and stuff. I'm so clever. I had no idea what progression fantasy was at the time. I was literally creating something that already existed. But either way, way, I'm happy to take that, adjust it now because I'm not to toot my own horn, but I'm a lot more skilled than I was in 2015. And what I've been doing for the past month is reading through that old manuscript, ripping it apart, taking out what I can use out of it, and building it into its best form, into something good for me, good for progression fantasy, and something that is good for the setting that Fool introduced to the world. So, yeah, that's basically it. So, I am Become Death. I am excited to write, and there's a couple of more stories that will be coming after that I've been pumped to write for a long time as well. All right. Oh, okay. I'm gonna go speed round because apparently we have 5 minutes left. This is what happens when I prattle on. Let's see. What's my favorite Pokemon? Oh God, it varies. Probably Mew. I really getting Mew was a complete and like giant childhood event for me. Like I literally got it at a Nintendo event, and I was just like staring at my Game Boy for like a full 5 minutes, like an official Mew. I was like super happy about it. But yeah, probably my favorite one to this day. All right, Tim, how am I supposed to continue writing my own worthless bit of fiction when my screen is full of the wisdom of great and experienced authors? Tim, no fiction is worthless. I want that to be very, very clear. No fiction is worthless, no matter the form. If we were going by that logic, then the fact that the Epic of Gilgamesh um, completely shaped the English language, not the English, the storytelling lexicon of humanity, especially for the West, everything just having anything to do with the Middle East. And for the, Three Kingdoms, Journey to the West, all these old stories are so great and so influential that you could say that just because they exist, all other writing is worthless. I don't believe that. You bring your worth to your writing, and the worth that someone gains from it is what they create in their own mind as they read your words. And that is my opinion on that. So keep going. If it brings you joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, then don't do it. But if it does, do it. And that sometimes is worth enough. And who knows, your life might change. Mine did. So yeah. Next up, favorite anime. Berserk. Uh, like very, very easy. Berserk. If we're bringing movies in there, it might be Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, or Jinro, or Ghost in the Shell, but it is Berserk, hands down. I would love to prattle on, but like I've got 3 minutes left, so we'll continue. What's my favorite scene for each Fool book? Oh dear God. Okay, I'd have to like remember which scenes happen in which books, especially since some of them got cut up differently for Amazon. But off the top of my head, things that stand out: Balin's Cabal, they're meeting and kicking ass. Let's see, the Journey into the Hells in general. The Death of the Beard. That entire chapter was one of my favorites of all time. Let's see, the Forging of Clagon. The Fetch, that's another one. The Windmill, it goes down the line, but I unfortunately probably don't have time to like get it all straight. There's several questions left. Okay, what is my favorite part about being an author? Creation. Creation and sharing that creation with others, and having that creation make others' lives better, or at least make them more entertained. I view it as an act of giving in many ways, and that act of giving warms my heart. The act of creation and the act of giving is what probably is my favorite part of being an author. And that would be the answer to that question. Yeah, it's a little schmaltzy, but that's what I'm doing. Am I accepting auditions, asking for a friend? We'll chat, Dan. I really liked your voice. We'll chat. Next. Aurora/Diana says, Jug, how did I feel when the ping race started? I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was the funniest thing that happened, and it made the Discord so lively. And it was just a wonderful thing. To this day, Diana, I am so happy you started it. Like, it made it I looked forward to it every day. I looked forward to my overreactions. I looked forward to the relationships we built during the during that entire time. It was glorious. But yeah, so it was glorious. But yeah, absolutely. I was very happy with it, and I grew more happy as time went on. Thank you, Annie. Alrighty. So I believe we are out of time. What is the first audiobook of yours I should buy? Um, the fact that I co-write with Carter, let's see. Yeah, you can just go to my Amazon store. I have Runeseeker Book One by myself and Carter J. Thompson. Uh, so when are we getting a face reveal? My God. KT says Mark of the Fool 1. That was the first story that I published, the first novel I ever published. So it makes sense to start there. And then we can go to Runeseeker. You can go to Runeseeker after that. And of course, the rest of Mark of the Fool. And my other stories one will be going live on Patreon soon, and the other will be published onto Amazon next year. I also have short stories in Book of Blades. And Alex, it's both. It's literally both. Which is funny. Worry of Zabiala in Oath's Blood and Coin, who shares that same trait, and it might be for a particular reason in there. But yeah, it's totally both. Geneva, I think we are officially out of time. Thank you. Thank you so much for making sure that I wasn't talking to myself this entire time. It was wonderful to have everyone here, and I will wave, I will smile, I will say goodbye, and good luck. See you. Thank you for keeping me company.